Guys, we're back with the Zilosophy podcast. This is Z on a very big day. It's a new moon with great energy to launch a new project, which is typically what new moons are, but specifically for what I just launched, even better. It's all about communication and philosophy, the heart versus the mind, all that kind of stuff that we talk about in Zilosophy. So, first thing I'm going to do is promote that. It's called Zilosophy for the People, by the People. It's on a new patriotic platform where you can find it called ourfreedomfunding.com. O-U-R freedomfunding.com. And you can look up Zilosophy for the People, by the People. I'll also put the link below here in the podcast and the video version. But a really crazy story. So I've been thinking about this the last couple weeks, trying to put together a tour and get back out with the people and do Zilosophy, help communities, one community at a time, rebuild and talk about sovereignty and all the stuff we talk about in Zilosophy, looking inward and all that stuff. I won't go into all that, but it's really come together amazingly, and the launch happened today. Last week I met one of Scott McKay's friends. You might have seen a photo of me on Scott McKay's Telegram channel with my Save the Kids t-shirt on. And then just yesterday I was trying to find out who's behind this Our Freedom Funding platform. And I found Our Freedom Book, which is one of the sister companies. Turns out there's this guy that's launching all of these patriotic platforms where you can't be canceled. So I asked to talk to him, and he said, gave me his direct number. Total New York guy, Dave Lipsky. It turns out he's a mechanic who got pissed off when his wife got canceled. He just met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He's building a platform to compete with GoFundMe, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and a bunch of others. He spoke at the Freedom and Health Conference in Tulsa. And so this guy, he's telling me all this stuff on the call. I'm like, is this guy pulling my leg? He sounds like a New York car salesman. Now we've talked a bunch of times since then. He's totally legit. I checked him out myself. And it's this great, he's a blue collar guy. And this is what it's about, is patriots in this country. We, the people, need to take the country back. And I don't mean forcefully. I mean by doing stuff like what Dave Lipsky is doing. He's an amazing patriot. He said he doesn't know anything about technology, but he's going to go build platforms for patriots that aren't going to get censored and canceled. And so that's where you can find my program. It's about the Arise USA tour, which I'm going to follow along like a deadhead. Create videos. I'm bringing back all the characters from Zilosophy TV with Uncle Z and friends, and my educational videos, Zilosophy educational videos. And so the crowdfunding video is hilarious. It's got a lot of fun in there because I use the characters to tell the story about helping to fundraise. So an amazing project. Please help out however you can, contribute, share, do whatever you can. It's exciting. And I started talking about the new moon and the astrology. We've got another astrology episode today. I told you I'm going to be doing more of this stuff. I think more people need to get into astrology to help. It really has helped me map out my months and years, and I'm still not putting as much time as I'd like to. A part of the accessible astrology community. The guy that I'm having on today, Tarek Adib, is the husband of Eugenia Kroc, who founded Accessible Astrology. He's a really cool guy. He's got an amazing British accent, the type you could listen to for hours. Don't worry, we only went for about an hour, but he's just one of those guys. You hear me say in the episode, as soon as I heard his voice, not does he just have an amazing accent, but you could just tell his vibe is like very simpatico with my vibe. Both very chill, laid back, but very philosophical, very caring about other people, doing the things in this esoteric world career to help others. And so we talk a lot about astrology.
Maybe it's not too late. Maybe you could make my world a brighter place.
Recording. Hello, Tarek Adib,
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
astrologer extraordinaire, who just got a final wardrobe tip from Eugenia, his wife, also an astrologer extraordinaire. I love that.
Recently married, you got to keep up appearances, as they say.
Yeah, right. She wants you to look good on video, man. So, hey, these are what this, this is one of the incredible benefits of marriage, having somebody to hold you accountable, to hold
Yeah,
you to a higher standard, right?
yeah, yeah.
Quite
Awesome.
frankly, as a single guy, there are times where I do miss that, and I'm being very honest.
Yeah,
But
lucky to be here, and it's really cool that we managed to make it through it this weird COVID time, because obviously there's always challenges for all couples at the moment.
are we through it?
Well, that's the rub, isn't it?
Yeah, right. That'll be something actually interesting to talk about a little bit later because, there's stuff in the astrology of this month of relationships. It's like,
Yeah,
the breaking point for a lot of people because there are a lot of people that are on
absolutely,
diverging paths and it's rough. I got friends in that situation.
totally.
So obviously we want to talk a lot about astrology today. We want to get into some stuff, but just to give a brief introduction, I'll do one prior. But when I first heard Eugenia, and then I heard you guys do a podcast, and I heard your voice, and I was like just drawn to it. I'm like, I got to meet this dude. Like, so let's just, we're going to get into a little bit about my reading. We were just talking about off camera, but let's just talk very quickly about your background. You're from Africa, but you're Egyptian, but you're British. And I actually don't even know that whole story and how that fits together.
Yeah,
How you ended up with a Liverpool accent sounding like one of the Beatles.
that's New Yorkshire, mate. That's what we would say to you right now.
Sorry, man. See,
Yeah,
that's like comparing a New York and a Boston accent, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
just
Well,
bad form.
take it very personally in England.
I don't blame you. I would too.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, and I mean, no, I'm English. I was born in England, but my roots, my parents are Egyptian, so
Gotcha.
my ethnicity is from Egypt, and I was born with my brothers in England, and I lived there most of my life, although I travelled quite a bit. But generally, my roots are still there. Like I still have a house there,
Oh, no kidding.
in Yorkshire, in England. Yeah, a place called, well, it's Leeds is where I grew up.
Oh yeah, I know Leeds. Never been there, but I know.
Football,
Yeah, I know it from the football team.
doing okay at the moment, so we're happy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Maybe they'll even be fans soon.
Maybe what? Sorry.
Maybe they'll even have fans again soon.
There's a lot of fans in Leeds that are very, very loyal, and
Oh,
obviously there's
yeah.
a bit of a debate with the football at the moment.
Well, those EPL teams, man, they're like like Americans with our sports. It's interesting because I don't know if you've seen this in England, but for me and many of my friends, one of the byproducts of COVID is like, you know what, sports is bullshit. I'm tired of wasting my time on that. Now I do still watch some, but not nearly like I did, and a lot of the leagues are pandering their woke BS and turning people off. And so people are realizing that at first, I think a lot of people use sports to like, oh, I'm stuck at home. I want to watch something. And now it's like, I realized I don't really need that in my life.
Mm. Yeah, it's weird. It's the tribalism,
Yeah.
which there's a huge staunch tribalism that exists with this sort of fan aspect, and then let's say somewhere in England, for example, the north, the working class mentality, is more staunch with it in a lot of ways. But that tribalism, that loyalty, that kind of like joy, of supporting something, it's just in the blood, really. And if you took it beyond the sports, so obviously the Industrial Revolution created a lot of this stuff, Empire created a lot of this stuff, but still, there is something good about watching sport, if you're into it,
Yeah.
simply because there's a great athleticism to it. The problem at the moment, which has been highlighted massively, is just to do with the money, the money aspect of it. Like, for example, for me, when Sky Sports came in, and you couldn't watch it on regular TV, it was such a big thing for me and my family. We'd watch the football every week. It was something that was really part of the culture. I mean, even in Egypt, it's very, very staunch. The love
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
football, and pretty much most of the world except for America,
Right.
in terms of, you could call it soccer, or whatever. But there is a huge loyalty and passion for that level of sportsmanship. But sadly, the money that's come in, from the 90s in particular, even though it's created a lot of, you could say, good sportsmanship or footballing, we're seeing it now in its most, its worst light. you know, how these super leagues, I don't know if you know anything about this, but it's a big deal at the moment for the past 3 weeks. It's been
Oh yeah, the Super League.
the Super League stuff that's been kicking in with the football.
Well,
And
that goes back into the astrology of breaking down all the old paradigms and structures, right?
yeah, well, money as well, and greed, and you know, these sorts of aspects of tribalism, but then corporate rule.
Hmm.
And I agree with that. You know, the Capricorn aspects, you know, the bringing down of the corporate rule, or the exposure of the, you know, the greed and the things that aren't necessarily for the common man. You know, we're seeing this disparity massively now in between rich and poor,
Right.
and young and old as well.
All right. Well, enough about you. Let's talk about me.
Yeah, let's talk about you, Michael.
No, seriously though. So one of the first ways we actually finally connected was I booked you for a reading because I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I haven't had a reading for a while anyway. I couldn't get in with Eugenia, your wife, because she was so booked. By the way,
Yeah.
shout out to Accessible Astrology, the community that she's built and that you've become a lot more active in this year. Really been helpful to me. And I want to speak to a couple of those things so people understand why astrology is helpful. First thing was you did a video on the Saturn Jupiter conjunction,
Yeah,
which I watched like the very last day or two of the year last year in 2020. And there was a really key moment for me in there, which was incredibly helpful. And it speaks to the type of work that you guys do. It literally was like a saving moment of my life. Not to make it too big, but it really was a big moment for me. I've spent my whole life feeling different than other people, not wondering what the heck I'm doing here in this place. I don't really fit in. I don't have the same type of view that others do. And then in that moment, you said, you talked about how this Saturn Jupiter conjunction is like the moment where everything changes for humanity, and where power to the people and the age of sovereignty. And like we just talked about, breaking down empires and structures. And it hit me. Oh my God, that's why I came here. I came here to have a front row seat to watch this happen.
Mm.
And in that instant, I swear to God, Tarek, it changed everything for me.
That's awesome.
I get it now. I can't tell you how many hours I spent like wondering, what the heck am I doing here? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, it makes sense. So I want to thank you for that. And then I want to thank you
And
also.
validation to it all.
Yeah, which we all need, right? We both, I go to astrologers and mediums and psychics, and I talk to all kinds of different esoteric people. And a lot of the time it's really just getting confirmation, right? Because what you guys talk about is, this age is about reconnecting to intuition and listening to our own selves instead of taking ideas or taking whatever rules from other people. It's like creating our own. But there was another key moment when you did our reading where you were, and I have it on video, I just watched it again recently, when you're telling me like, yeah, there's like a whole lot of misunderstanding in your chart here. Like you're going to be severely misunderstood. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. I've been that way my whole life. It's fine. Oh my God, were you right? I had no idea it was going to go to a whole nother level, including even in the original iteration of the Discord group in Accessible Astrology, because I sort of assumed this role of moderator of the group because Eugenia couldn't do it and there was no one else. And I was just moderating to try and keep it together. And I think a lot of people took that the wrong way, that I wanted it to be my group and control it, which was absolutely not the case. I just wanted to like babysit it for her so it wouldn't fall apart, which it eventually did. And now it's back and we're all thankful for that. But like from there, then that was like the training ground for me to start speaking out publicly about the corruption, which I've done now for 4 straight months on social media. And man, have I been attacked. I've been called a Nazi. I've been called anti-Muslim.
Right.
Yeah, ironic for this conversation. I've been called all kinds of vicious things, stupid, crazy, dumb. And just like that moment, I just keep hearing your voice about like, yeah, you told me this was going to happen. So more validation for you. And now I'll shut up and let you talk about the astrology that's going on this month and in the world and all that. But I just wanted to make it clear that what I've gotten out of just my brief interactions with you.
Well, that's amazing. And it really warms my heart, obviously, because you know, we're all doing this for, if you are really with the sacred oath of astrology, you're doing this from the heart. You're doing this to be of service. You're not doing it for ego, even though a lot of the time people could easily, you know, use these things to conjure corrupt, just like all the corruption that exists in the world.
Absolutely.
But if you are coming from your heart, if you are coming from service, which is really the ultimate aspect of Aquarius, which, you know, rules astrology, and you're coming from a neutral perspective, like, you know, Mercury, you know, that kind of application of one's unique gifts and abilities, then really we're trying to serve and we're trying to help others, because we are outliers. Like, you know, the astrologers right now who are coming from this perspective are really kind of outcast as well, like we always have been.
Yeah.
And there's even division between astrologers now, you know, division between, there's this whole like woke, non-woke thing going on, which is a very political thing rather than necessarily an interpretation thing.
Yeah.
Because obviously we are humans, so we're all subject to the, you know, what's the word now? We're not going to get it necessarily right because we're humans. You know, we are fallible, should I say?
Right.
Interpreting the stars, interpreting the history. But sadly, there's a lot of politics going on at the moment, and this division, which I've seen very clearly since coming here last year. There's a huge division between, let's say, blue, red, right, wrong, vaccine, non-vaccine. I mean, there's no middle ground. So when you're looking at the stars, like astrologers who are coming from a place of authenticity, integrity, and sovereignty, then all we're trying to do is serve. And I just want to say another thing just quickly before we get on to whatever we're going to talk about, just to put this into perspective in interpretation. When we're looking at the elements, because it's going to be a bit relevant to you, I'm not going to say anything about your chart, but in terms of the elements, for example, fire. So we've got fire, water, earth, and air. Fire can be quite volatile, and it can also be very upfront, honest, initiation, energy.
Yeah.
And then when we're dealing with other elements, so we're dealing with water, that can be very like scary for a sensitive water type.
Like me.
I'm just saying, you know, just making it general here.
Yeah, no,
You
no.
know.
I was making it personal, not you.
and you know, that misinterpretation, sadly, you know, from the heart, from the authenticity, you know, from the integrity, you know, from the feeling of heart-based awareness, which is of service again, when it can be misinterpreted, you know, the fire, you know, like the African fire, you know, like the sort of like, you know, the black man's eyes, you know, can be quite fiery, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's because it's coming from a place of real heart sometimes, and then it gets misinterpreted because of the politics, because of the sanitization, the political correctness, and then we miss the actual heart-based connection when we're trying to do good.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I mean, really, I changed careers from the music business specifically to serve others, to create a platform where I could do that. And another thing you talked about when you were looking at my chart is like, hey, you know, this is a really good chart for philosophy. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's what my company is based on and named after. It's called Zilosophy. So again, those types of confirmations are great. But, you know, for me, I think it's important. I say this a lot. My mom taught me, she still says all the time, I've gotten pretty good at it. You know, I realize it's none of my business what other people think of me. And I don't mean that to be callous or like I don't care. The point is that's literally their business. It's based on a reflection of themselves that they're looking at. And the same for me when I judge others, right? Like, so for me, I try to focus on my business issues. What do I think of me? Do I think I'm doing the right thing? Do I think I'm saying the right thing? Do I think maybe I've gone too far in this case? Yes, maybe here and there I can do that. Like you said, we're all imperfect humans. But I don't do this for me. And the best example of that is the way I've been speaking out on social media the last 4 months. It's not fun for me to have very close friends and family members call me stupid and dumb and crazy. But again, like that's their karma and their stuff, not mine. It's for astrologers, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's very strange. It's true. It's this vitriol, this level of attack. You know, you talk about trolls and all this sort of stuff. That it's actually like paid people now. You know, that before, when the internet was a free loving place where anyone could say what they wanted, and we were in a, you know, this hippie kind of like free, even though when you look at sadly the dark side of it, that it was actually created from the military, you know, you can see this yin yang perspective. It's like freedom, but then the constraints within the freedom. And then now we're moving into a more, like say, global situation. We're starting to see censorship. You know, we're starting to see editing going on. You know, so the freedom, the hippie idea, you know, let's all communicate, let's all be free. You could say Aquarius if it's an interpretation. Sadly, now we're seeing the more authoritarian aspect of Aquarius, the cold, scientific, data analytic, and then also when we're editing things, then what is our attention? You know, where are we placing our attention? What can we see? So it's very subversive, and this is a lot to do with the Pluto stuff as well. Don't want to get too astrological, but there's so much playing out at the moment, and those coming from the heart, coming from sovereignty, integrity, wanting to do the right thing, are being attacked.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, right? Because you know, you look at the people, and again, you know, I don't like to say one side or the other. I've spent the majority of philosophy talking about we're all one, we are the same, despite our differences, and I still believe that. But Eugenia actually helped me a lot last year realize that there is something that this isn't political for me. It never has been. I've never belonged to one political party or another. I just don't like bullshit. So whoever's spewing the most bullshit, those are the people I'm going to speak out against. And that happens to be a certain side right now. But Eugenia talked at length last year about this is a battle of the godly versus the godless, good versus evil, which just kind of recently hit me that those words, God versus the devil, actually have the words good and evil in them, right? Like this is the playing out of two much bigger things than human politics or anything else human for that matter. It just speaks astrologically to that a little bit about what you guys have seen and what you've seen with that.
Well, for me, it's like it's fear and love.
Exactly.
Because God and evil, good and bad is a lot of a religious context, which in a lot of ways it is a lot to do with that at the moment. Because if you look astrologically, the South Node in Sagittarius, this is what's called the North and South Node that move every 18 months. So last year in 2020, when the South Node was in Capricorn, and then lockdowns happened, you know, around about in March 2020, let's say, we were all stuck in our homes. So Capricorn, you know, it made sense for us all to be stuck at home. But then when the node shifted in May into Gemini, the North Node and South Node Sagittarius, by the way, not all astrologers use the nodes. But if you're looking at it from that perspective, the South Node, the collective, suddenly becomes much more religious. You know, like the cult of Trump, for example, and things like that started to occur. Or the fight between truth, non-truth. And then suddenly we go into this sort of war-like situation, science against common sense, you know, and suddenly we haven't got any kind of middle ground. It's warlike, it's fanaticism, which can be quite Sagittarian.
Yeah.
And then Gemini, meaning my way's right, your way's wrong. You know, there's no kind of heart, which is more Leo, you could say. So as we're moving through this battle between, let's say, truth, calling it out bullshit, and at the same time, ignorance is a great weapon as well. That's why I'm saying censorship can be quite dangerous, because if everybody can chat freely, then why is it dangerous to censor stuff? But at the same time, what's happening for another narrative is like, these people are dangerous because we're under threat, i.e. this virus is coming to get us. We need to censor this information because we need to deal with it, you know, which is a fear-based perspective.
Absolutely. And I talk about that a lot because, you know, I speak out about certain things, and like I said, people come after me. And what I tell them is like, look, I have the right as a sovereign being to say what I think and what I feel. You won't find me coming to your page to try and correct you. You think I'm dangerous because I speak out against the narrative and question the narrative. I think you're dangerous because you don't. However, I give you the right to do that. I don't tell you that you should speak out against the narrative because it's not my place to say. Although personally, I think everybody should question things and look at things for themselves. I mean, that's what sovereignty is about, right?
Totally.
And discernment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It really is to do with that, and Saturn being in Aquarius really is a follow through from Saturn being in Capricorn. So the 3-year transits, Saturn in a sign, and Saturn being in Capricorn for 3 years was very much to do with that. You know, integrity, discernment, and dealing with that in a very Earth-like structured way. And because that's moved now into Aquarius, air sign, it's much more transparency becomes much more important. You can't hide behind walls anymore, is how I'd like to see it. Before you could put your fortress castle, hide the king on the castle, but now the air, whether it's on the internet, whether it's virus, you can't escape it anymore.
Yeah. For me, that's a very interesting point because, I've spent, Zoosophy is about that, right? Like, I just want to know the truth. I don't care what it is. I think we deserve to know the truth about humans, about who we are and where we come from and what we're doing and where we're going. This was the sort of the thought behind a lot of it 6 years ago when I started this. Having said that, I had no idea that the truth was going to be anything like this and this dark. As you dig in, it does get really messed up and scary. But I, like you, I'm an optimist. I don't know. My knowledge about astrology is pretty remedial. I had planned to spend these last few months really diving in, but I got sort of pulled and called into this, speaking out and digging for the truth and educating people and that kind of vibe. So I haven't looked that much, but I would imagine, I did feel a connection with you immediately just when I heard your voice. And I would imagine you could find that in the charts if you know what you're looking for. And one of the things about that is that Eugenia has said a few times over the last few months that something similar to me, and that I sort of see the end of this movie, how it ends. I don't know exactly how we get there. And I think I get the sense that you have that same thing, like, no, it's going to be okay. We win, like God wins, the light wins, humanity wins, darkness loses, however you want to cage that. But I still see that. And even though I look into the details of all this stuff and I have lots of patriot friends that come to me panicking, and I'm like, look, just chill, relax. This is going to work out. It's painful for all of us. And it's going to be, but it is going to work out. I mean, and I get the sense that you have that same type of view.
Yeah, I mean, again, the inner wisdom of the heart, it's like the ancient knowledge of the heart. If you want to look at indigenous cultures, why have they existed in their own culture, in their own history? A lot of the time passed down, information passed down, because they've been connected to the earth. They've had an inner knowing, which comes from, let's say, a heart-based consciousness. So therefore, the mind, which is now, again, another war going on from heart and mind, someone might be thinking intuitively, this is the right thing to do, but the mind's saying something different.
Yeah, right.
So this is the war that's going on. And if you look at the West, in terms of the education system and how we're taught to be validated in terms of status, examinations, all this kind of stuff, it doesn't necessarily take into account that intuition, which the ancients very much had a deeper connection to, because they were in rhythm, natural law with the earth. They were sensitive to the frequencies or the changes in the environment. But we've cut all that out now in the sense of third dimensional Newtonian, acquiring or materialism. So there is a disconnect between the heart and the mind, and there is a coldness that's sadly coming now as well, which you could say again is Aquarian in the sense of robotics and all the technologies that are coming through. So we're getting more of a disconnect, more of a movement away from the heart, from the natural organic flow. So that's where the fear comes in, and that's where the uncertainty comes in. What's going to happen? Is it going to turn into, let's say, a dystopian world, or is it going to turn into a new Earth?
Yeah.
And that's really what's going on at the moment, this uncertainty, or this kind of like, we can't escape technology, we can't escape the fourth industrial revolution. but who controls it and who's in charge? So therefore, we're seeing China against America right now, or we're seeing communism against capitalism. We're seeing all this changing moments.
Mm.
So to answer your question, I think, what is truth then? You know, if you want to go into a philosophical debate here,
Yeah, I love that stuff.
you know, like what is truth and what constitutes truth? So for example, science would become more, let's say, reputable or more, well, it's certainly become more prolific, hasn't it, over the last 200-300 years, once microscopes and all these technologies came in, and you can go to more micro analytics and stuff, and therefore the idea of God or the idea of the unknown becomes less credible. So that's been a feature of modernity, if you want to call it that. But why is that validated? Is because of, let's say, the truth that it espouses. Therefore, correspondence, for example. I drop a pen, it goes to the ground. That's called gravity, because it happens all the time. You know, possibly there might be anomalies, but because it happens more than not, we can consider that a truth. So there's a correspondence. Likewise, there's a coherence. You know, let's say it's not like when I do this thing often, it always happens back. In the same way, it's like correspondence, but there's a coherence as well. So these sort of ways of looking at truth also becomes quite important if we're saying this is a truth, this isn't a truth.
Right.
And
That's a really cool one, because gravity is an example I used in my public speaking engagements a lot. You know, because I have a saying, the truth doesn't care what you believe. The truth is the truth, regardless of our beliefs, but our beliefs do have consequences in regards to that. And gravity was an example I would use. And, you know, walk along the cliff's edge and say you don't believe in gravity and see what happens.
yeah.
Right. But then it's interesting, because I had this kid in the class once who challenged me on that, because there are people, and this kid, you could tell, had a really special brain. He wasn't like maybe the best human communicator, as is often the case in those situations. It was like, yeah, but gravity is not even true. And I was like, oh man, I'd love to talk to this kid and see what he's thinking. But you know, in that situation, I didn't get a chance to do that. The other thing you said is, you know, fear versus heart. Isn't that this versus this, right? Because fear comes from here. It doesn't come from the heart.
Exactly. The heart knows, the heart is in tune, the heart is present, the heart has a great intuition or a great present moment awareness. And therefore, if we're in that present state, then we're receiving, you know, and also we're in rhythm, we're breathing properly.
That's really what philosophy is about. What I taught and learned myself, and I continue to learn myself, is how do you turn this off and listen to this? Because the heart always knows, like you just said. It's a yes or no right away. If you can turn this off and you ask a question to the heart, should I be with this person? Should I take this job? Should I buy this car? Should I eat this thing or drink this thing, right? Like your heart will give you a direct answer right away. There's no conversation. It's just a yes or no. Here, man, that can go on forever, and you can spin yourself around in circles. And really, that's why I wrote about golf first, because it's an interesting concept. If you're playing golf from up here, man, it can get really rough. But if you're just present and playing from here, it's a pretty chill, fun game.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget the feet as well. I mean, there is more to this than just the heart and the mind. Obviously, there's the gut as well, but the feet, you know, we're going holistic whole now.
Being grounded.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of the electromagnetic stress is occurring in people's minds, because the problem is, you see, I mean, the battle between the heart knowing and the mind confusion, or the mind extremism, or the mind fear, because the lizard brain is obviously keeping us alive as well. We don't want to just ignore it. But this is where the manipulation is coming in, because, like I said, that example of gravity, we've got to be careful here that we're not going into magical thinking or psychosis as well. Because yes, that person might walk along the cliff edge, and then if you want to go to this deep level now of parallel reality, he might walk on water or walk on into the next dimension. Okay, but there might be another dimension, a third dimension, that sees him smashed on the ground, which sadly family is not going to really be very, very traumatic for them. It's probably one of the worst ways to kill yourself for the family. And that's a choice you might want to make, but then there's a danger here of losing it. And I see that a lot right now in terms of this war that's going on, is that we're all getting attacked in some way. You know, people wanting to stay, let's say, in the third dimension, believe what they're told, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you could say the meek will inherit the earth, but if they're not asking questions, you know,
It's a
if
great
they're not, yeah, if they're not asking questions, and they just, then they become like sheep, they become like serfs rather than sovereign beings.
right.
But at the same time, people who are also on the fringes, who are maybe not discerning this information, which is, you know, massive there. That's why people like QAnon and various others have been discredited, because, you know, again, from the scientific point of view, you can't necessarily quantify these things.
Right.
But then you can go into another realm where the whole world is all fake, and we're all being, and then all of that creates disharmony, doesn't it? And it
Right.
also creates a certain degree of suggestibility.
Yeah.
But for me, being in the heart, just to make it personal right now,
Please.
I'm gonna trust my intuition because of my integrity, because of the choices that I've made in life that have made me discern the distinction between right and wrong for me, you know.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm dealing with others, I if I'm in a society, which we all are, I mean, sadly, many of us have been removed from that, and that's not helpful. Or it's very dangerous for our physiology not to be able to be around people. But at the same time, if we're believing the narrative, the third dimension, the news, whatever, that there is a very killer virus out there, and we've got to be careful, we've got to get vaccinated, blah blah blah, this and that, then I don't have to rush into it if I'm not at risk. But at the same time, I've also got to be mindful that, am I being ignorant here now as well?
Right.
So it becomes really complicated at the moment. And the philosophy, you know, is to look at, let's say, the higher perspective. Why is this happening? Why is there no communication? Why, when, let's say, you bring up these questions because the correspondence isn't quite right, you know, why am I seeing censorship? Why am I seeing lots of people, let's say, in PPE and various other medical industries making obscene amounts of money? Why am I seeing huge corporations going through the roof, and then now everybody's going to be on universal basic income? I just want to ask those questions, really. And for my own personal integrity, my own heart-based intuition, and with everything that I've learned, because that's what creates integrity, I'm going to be sovereign to myself and make the right decisions for myself. The scary thing is, Michael, is that I'm seeing a very ominous, oppressive, marauding force coming at me, telling me what I should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And then when I ask these questions, they don't seem to have an answer for it.
Right.
I think bringing in the astrology is the last point.
Sure. Go ahead.
This is the cognitive dissonance that is also a feature of this time, and people burying their heads in the sand. And that's a feature of Saturn Uranus, basically, which is the major theme of the year, which happened in February, happening next month, happening at the end of the year, and will go on all the way until October next year, 2022. Not just that, you know, we've also got the Pluto return in America happening at its peak in February next year. So obviously America is crucial to the unfolding of what's going to happen. And but no one's going to save you. You know, you got to save yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, through the podcast, I've heard Eugenia talk about that a lot. If you think that this isn't communism that they're trying to bring here, go talk to some people that lived in communist countries. I mean, it is. And it's funny because, you know, I had a friend post something on Facebook. I generally don't go to other people's pages. I'm only on Facebook and Instagram simply to spread truth and use those platforms against them, because I know that Facebook was created by the CIA and it's evil and yada, yada, yada. We won't go into that. But this guy asked, can you make can anyone make a case against vaccination? I said, well, I've done a ton of studies. So I gave him a few tidbits of information, viciously attacked by strangers. And meanwhile, he said on the thing, please, no argument. I'm just looking for information. So these people started attacking me. You're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a coward, this and that. And I said, just kept going back. Look, guys, I'm not here for you. This guy asked me a question. I'm giving him the information he asked for. I don't really care what you think of me. I'm sorry to upset you, but I'm not going to argue with strangers. That's not what I'm
Mm.
here for. I'm not going to waste my time with that. Um, so, I think it's, that sovereignty for me is staying above and staying out of that, not being pulled down into the mud. I just refuse to do it. You want to
Yeah,
be down in the mud, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to, but I'm not getting down there with you.
yeah. I mean, again, going back to the idea of correspondence and coherence, to answer, I wouldn't really answer the question, but like how I see things going, we have to be sensitive to the will or to the consequences of what people are doing.
Hmm.
So yes, I believe, yes, God wins. Love will overcome fear. Humanity will progress. We will move into a new time. There's no getting out of that.
Right.
But sadly, in terms of the evidence of what I'm seeing, we're not over this yet. It's
And,
there's
and
still
like
more,
and like
there's
you
still
said,
more going on.
some people are going to choose to stay in this dimension. And for those of us who've done some spiritual research, that means like another 26,000-year cycle in the third dimension. No, thank you. Not me. I'm not doing that. And, there is a part of me that's sad about that. I want everybody that I know and love. And really, I do try to send love to all human beings, even if I don't like them. I want everybody to come. And I do believe that everybody will get there eventually. But that was sort of part of that Saturn conjunction thing there. Why did I come here? Why did I do this again? Why am I doing here? And I realized that was for this, to see this happen directly. But I'm not coming back here again for this. It's not. I'm going to the next dimension. Whatever's there, I'll take my chances, and I'll
Yeah.
see everybody else when they get there.
Yeah, again, I think what I like about this conversation in the sense that we're all free to choose what we want to choose.
Yeah.
But then it's like when you look at history, you've seen this to be many times when people haven't had a free, like America's a new concept and America's going through a new change. Like before that, it was mainly to do with kings and serfs.
Yeah. This is still an experiment. People don't really realize.
Yeah. And, it's like if we don't have a choice, then obviously we've lost sovereignty. That's pretty obvious. And maybe we had the luxury of always having that choice living in the West. Like, I've lived the majority of my life in the West. So, I've always felt that. But astrology is giving people astrologers or people who understand astrology, a different perspective. We're getting like a higher perspective on things right now. Or I don't want to sound arrogant when I say that, but it could be a different perspective.
Except for those heathens that don't look at the nodes.
All astrologers, they don't look at them, but that's fine.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
honestly, I still don't even know exactly what the nodes mean. I'm still learning that. I just thought that was funny that you mentioned that. And again, that shows that dissonance. It's like, hey, astrologers are free to create their version of astrology however they want. Who are we to judge?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's very strange at the moment because there's so much uncertainty and there's sort of a lack of dialogue and there's a lot of fear. So astrologers have always been pretty, I know what's right, then another, I've researched more than another. I've often felt that. I didn't come into astrology like that.
Right.
I sort of like had various other experiences that got me into, let's say, philosophy, because I did a philosophy degree.
Yeah.
And also, self-help and all that kind of stuff really found fascinating. And then I started to learn more about, let's say, healing. So I've done lots of healing, Reiki, EFT, massage, things like that. Tai Chi.
This explains why, immediately when I heard your voice, I was like, I know this dude. I gotta know this dude. Because we just have all the same kind of interests. And again, I'm sure that ties to astrology somehow, but just energetically, you can feel the vibration of like, oh, this guy gets it. I want to talk to that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Resonance is a huge part of like synchronicity and flow, So when we're looking at vibration and frequency, it's how you feel, isn't it? It's how you intuit. Again, that part of what we're not taught at school in the West anyway. Like you wouldn't necessarily have plant medicines and things like that. In certainly we're not in England, because it's like it's seen as it's illegal,
Right.
and the ancient wisdom of, let's say, South America or various other ancient cultures. It's sort of demonized to a certain extent. You know, it's not adopted, it's not listened to or adhered to. It's seen as weird, crazy. You know, that's not relevant. It's not science.
Right. Which is interesting because now we're coming back to the place where people are waking up and go, wait a minute, that is science. What is all this chemical stuff that they're giving us? And is that what's making us all sick and crazy and all of that? So I want to switch a little bit because you and I can talk philosophically for hours, obviously, but
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about, or want you to talk rather, a little bit about the astrology of the month. Real
Okay.
quick, I'm going to do a quick commercial. I've got here what is called a bioresonator coin. I keep this in my pocket and it keeps away 5G and other EMF frequencies. And I know that you and Eugenia, that's one of your resources and suggestions for this month in particular, is get devices and technologies that keep the electronic waves as far away from you as you possibly can, because like you said, it's not like we're getting rid of these things. So how do you protect against it when you have it all the time? This is called a bioresonator. You can email me at info@philosophy.org if you want to get one. My sister sells them. Quick advertisement there. We don't usually do that here, but what the hell. Let's talk about today real quick. It's May 11th. Sorry, go ahead.
Plenty of water.
Yeah.
Ideally, natural spring water if you can get it. If not, filtered water, but plenty of water. Put your feet on the grass, go outside, hug a tree if you need to. That's free stuff you can do, which can really help with that as well.
Sun gazing.
Yeah, get out in the sun for sure.
So let's talk about today. It's May 11th. There's a very important new moon today. So let's talk a little bit about that and then just get into when you and I started talking about doing this podcast now, you said, well, this should be a very telling month. So I want to hear a little bit about what you think about all that stuff astrologically and your interpretation.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I do believe this is a very telling month, largely because there's an eclipse occurring. There was a solar eclipse that occurred back in December. I think it's the 14th of December in Sagittarius. And now we're getting a full moon lunar eclipse. So if we look at the lunar cycles, usually it's 28 days, 30 days, whatever it is when it goes around. It's kind of, we get the new moon, quarter moon, full moon, three-quarter moon, and then all over again. So in terms of, let's say, yearly cycle, we'd get Sagittarius, which is just to keep it relevant to this particular month. We got an eclipse that was a total solar eclipse happened on the 14th. Now, if you want to go further back, because the reason why I'm bringing eclipses up is that they are very powerful. So you get a full moon, you can feel it a lot of the time. You can feel that it's relevant. There's been loads of super moons that have occurred this year.
Yeah. Oh, I feel them.
And women are more into that because of the menstrual cycle. But if you've been following the moon cycles, you really start to understand the rhythm of the universe, just like equinoxes and solstices.
Yeah,
So
we were talking about lack of sleep earlier, like around the lunar cycles for the last 6 months to a year, it's like lucky if I sleep at all, on those couple of intense days, whether it's before, directly on, or sometimes after, but they're always there. I can feel it one way or the other.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. When you start to get into these rhythms, like say of the universe, and you start to put intention into these things, which, many ancients did, and seers and magi, whatever, start to feel the rhythms, the differences basically, and co-create and co-connect with it. So anyway, there's a full moon lunar eclipse occurring, going back to December, but really going all the way back to last year in June. That the eclipses that were going on then, because it was on the summer solstice, was so powerful. And that will be ending in June. Okay. So this next 2 months from May to June is a culmination. And I don't want to make it too complicated here in terms of the astronomy, but it's kind of like it's like I could say it's a tipping point, or it's a changing moment that's about to ensue, it would seem. We're in what's called Taurus and Gemini archetypes at the moment. So Taurus being earth, Gemini being air. We're grounded, but we're also espousing our unique gifts and abilities, if you want to simplify it like that. So where we are in our tribe, where we are on the earth, and who we are connected to, is really potent right now because of this eclipse energy that's occurring.
Mm.
So what does eclipses do? They change things, they move things, they end things, new beginnings. But we need to put it into context from December and to June, just to sort of make it relevant to why this could be quite a shifting moment. And that occurs on the 26th of this month. So I think this eclipse is super important in respect to what's coming in the future. So Taurus, which is where we are currently, moving into Gemini. The nodes again are going to shift from Gemini into Taurus. So what's happening is going to be very pivotal, what happens for next year. Now, whatever happens this month and into next month, because going into June, there's also a Uranus-Saturn square, which is a big theme of the year. That's very much to do with change, revolution. It's to do with this cognitive dissonance piece that we mentioned. It's to do with the authority. So these changing moments, i.e. the shift from the old world, going back into the Capricorn story of the last 3 years, into the new world, the fourth industrial revolution, I do feel that this month and next month are going to be crucial in terms of determining how that's going to look.
Yeah.
Because again, putting it into another context, Pluto into Aquarius in 2024 to 2026, this whole period of time is when we're really going to see the changes emerge big time. From now until then, it depends on what we do. So, for example, how everyone's conducted themselves, what's that going to look like? You know, there's been a vaccine, 12 vaccines that have come out. Are they in integrity? Are they going to be beneficial? Or are we going to need other vaccines? Or are they going to have a detrimental effect or a positive effect? We just don't know.
Yeah. And we're going to need antidotes.
Who knows? Yeah. Likewise, economy, which is really the one that I like to focus on the most regarding all of this, because when I look at the economics of this, you know, printing huge amounts of money in the last year, the potential for hyperinflation, and then at the same time seeing industries that obviously have to adapt to this new fourth industrial revolution.
Right.
You know, how's that going to look?
Right.
So I think that's more relevant than anything this
So
year.
what you said, I think, is really important, is a tipping point. And a lot of people can feel that just energetically, but also if you're paying attention to current events and not watching on mainstream media, where we know they've admitted that they're propaganda. So always recommend not to do that and to look for yourself, like we talked about being sovereign. But you see what's going on in Israel and Iran. You see what's coming to light with COVID, with hundreds or over 1,000 doctors now bringing a Nuremberg type lawsuit against the CDC and the WHO and what they've done for this whole thing. Again, wherever you stand, these are things that are actually happening. You see the election fraud stuff starting to come out, which I've been talking about for months. This stuff is real. People don't want to see it, but the proof is irrefutable. And now you see Arizona, it's starting to come out. Now Michigan's going to do a full forensic audit. You've got the stuff going on at the border. So it's really coming from all angles through in the public events sphere. And you can see that, like, this has to be a tipping point. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
None of us can predict exactly what it is or how it's going to play out or whatever. But, you know, these are the things astrologically, even with my remedial understanding, is to pay attention to dates and times and the information I get from people like you to be like, okay, around this time, something's going to happen. Like Jupiter into Pisces, the 13th and 14th, and that signifies seismic changes, right? So that's coming in a couple days from now. Talk about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Michael. I
actually did a little bit of preparation for
That's
this.
awesome.
I usually don't do.
Got me on the fly, as they say here.
I like it. It's more authentic that way, but this
Yeah,
one
I like
was
it.
like
I like
certain
it.
things I wanted to hit on. So I
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really good you bring it up, because it is really, really important that.
okay.
Now, again, we've got to put things into context here with astrology to interpret it in the best way that we can, because we're all trying our best to interpret it.
Right, and like you said, we're all human. I know astrologers that interpret things to a super left view,
Yeah.
others to a super right view, and others right in the middle. Right, like we're all humans. We all interpret things differently.
Sure. So the context why I bring that up is because we're looking at this in terms of these Saturn Uranus squares, which really are the most important aspects of the year. So if you look at the start of the year, January, February, that was a very difficult time for everyone. We had a little bit of respite, but now we're going back into it again because the Saturn Uranus square happens next month. Okay. And then we've got the last one in December, which what we talk about is eclipses. The last Sagittarius eclipse happens in December at the end of the year. So for me as an astrologer, my personal perspective, I feel that everything that's happening this year is going to culminate in November, December. So bringing in the Jupiter and Pisces thing, Jupiter goes into Pisces for a couple of months, goes in this week, 13th, as you mentioned. Okay, then it'll retrograde back into Aquarius. So bringing up the talk that I did, maybe I should post this so that people could get the talk, you know.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
that happened in Jupiter. That happened on the 21st of December, the winter solstice. So it's very weird the way that the solstice and equinoxes are all playing out. Okay, so the Jupiter in Pisces. Guess what? The summer solstice, the end of the eclipse last year, which was one of the most crucial eclipses, by the way, we'll ever experience.
Right.
That happened, that ends, and we've got Jupiter in Pisces this summer. But then Jupiter will go back into Aquarius, continuing this Aquarius theme, which basically means uncertainty, change, and all that. But Jupiter does go back into Pisces in January, or the end of the year, December, right at the end of the year, something like that. So the theme of next year is very much connected to what's going to happen in these next couple of months. That's when we start to tie the dots, you know, we start to work
This
out.
is like setting the tone for the way the world is going to be, kind of the vibe.
Exactly. And the reason why that's so important is because Jupiter used to rule Pisces, but also Neptune, that does rule Pisces now, is in Pisces. So therefore, the potency of Jupiter in Pisces is going to be very strong. What does that mean? Well, psychic awareness or intuition, you know, these sorts of things. But it also could mean total fantasy.
Right.
It could also mean that people have no idea what's going on. This is where the discernment comes in. This is where the individual sovereignty piece comes in.
Right.
So how this summer looks, if you think of it from a very practical point of view, I see it as like a Petri dish, basically. Everyone's about to just go out, vaccinated, non-vaccinated, whatever, people come back together again. Certainly lockdowns aren't going to be as much in the West anymore. Some people will be able to travel. And what's going to happen with that is that people are going to start cohabiting and mixing.
Mm-hmm.
So someone like yourself, who's maybe looking at things slightly alternatively, if you want to describe it as that, you might pick up on this tipping point. Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I do.
But not everybody else will. Everybody might think, it's going back to how it used to be.
Right. Which is very bizarre for me to see people view it that way. But again, I don't try and correct them. I don't try and convince them. It's just odd for me to see, wow, and again, that's the fear, right? I just want it to go back to normal. Well,
we don't know for sure. I'm just saying that as an example.
No, I get it. I get it.
So, but I'm just saying these are the potentials, basically. So people, this is where the discernment's going to continue to accelerate. And obviously there's a great fear here. You could say of super strains occurring between different mixing of this Petri dish. So
yeah, and there's also the stuff, the Petri dish of the shedding, right? Which I spoke to a virologist directly who assured me that shedding is very real and that, you know, the vaccinated are going to shed things to the non-vaccinated. But again, like for me, I get that. I'm still not going to give in to fear. I would rather die a horrible death than be convinced to fear my brothers and sisters in humanity. I'm not going to do it. So,
well, the sad thing is now is that everyone's getting fear. You know, it's like the non-vaccinated are like, oh, we're scared of the shedding.
Literally going back to segregation. There's baseball stadiums here that have a part for vaccinated and a part for non-vaccinated. I mean, this is literally pitting us against each other, but we're not different. Whether we chose to take a jab or we didn't choose to take a jab, we are still the same. We're human beings who make different choices. But you're right. I think sort of like the philosophical petri dish too, not just physical, but mental and emotional petri dish of people coming from different places of fear and love and everything in between. mixing back together, and it's going to be interesting to see how humanity decides to move forward together.
Yeah,
Or,
like
or not.
trauma is real. I'm telling you, it's going to be real, and you're going to get different examples of it. You're going to get people who never go out again because they just won't take the risk.
Yeah.
You're going to get people who go absolutely crazy and don't care at all about anything.
Right.
And then you're going to get a middle sort of group of people who are cautious, maybe hook up with their friends because they haven't seen them for a long time, family members, obviously. And that's essential. So I think whatever happens, there's going to be a commingling, which is required. So in that sense, Jupiter in Pisces, I think this summer's going to be good.
Yeah.
You know, let's look at Pisces. You know, it rules beauty, love. There's a lot of aspects to music here. You know, there's a lot of creativity. So the summer, whatever happens with this Jupiter in Pisces aspect, I think that a lot of people are going to feel, right, we're going to get some respite here. We're going to get some fantasy or joy in a way, which is good. But the problem is, and this is where the astrology comes in, what's going to happen in the autumn? You know, when things start coming back around again, because Saturn's also going to go retrograde this month. So we've had this new impulse, this new Aquarian energy, this new craziness, uncertainty. That's going to now relax a little, but it's going to go retro. It's going to go direct again. You know, as we move into the autumn. Likewise, Jupiter, this happy Piscean potential. We're out of this now. What happens when that goes back into Aquarius? Then we start to relive all these experiences again. And then as we approach next year, if people haven't got themselves in alignment with potentially what's coming, I haven't meditated and used the intuition of Jupiter and Pisces to get an understanding of what's potentially coming. Right. You know, because that could also be addiction, by the way. It could also be people getting more pissed or more intoxicated with drugs. I'm sure a lot of people will be doing a lot of that this summer, which might make their immunity weaker as well.
Sure.
So all of the potential, this experiment of 2021 is unfortunately about to ensue. But for people who are conscious, people who are to be here of service, going back to the start of this conversation, people who are going to survive, you have to be prepared for next year. And Jupiter into Pisces next year, but also the node shifting, i.e. the Scorpio energy, that's going to be much more relevant. Not the South Node in Sagittarius anymore, South Node in Scorpio. How's that going to look? And I'm really hoping it's not going to be a lot of death. You know, I'm hoping it's going to be more about transformation, you know, magic, new earth, cultivation, because, you know, that rules the soil, you know, and we see this more growth period in humanity, growth period in agriculture. But there's always this shadow side to all these interpretations.
Yeah, and this is really the heart versus the mind, you could say, is the shadow versus the light, right? So it's all back to the same thing, and we're all processing stuff from old shadow things that we didn't even know we had. And for those who don't know what shadow is, it's just those things when you get triggered, that's your shadow, and it's coming up. There's the pain of something happened to you in the past, this lifetime, another one. And mostly what we do is we push it down because we don't want to deal with it. But what I learned largely through plant medicine is that you have to send the shadow love and embrace it and hug it, and then you can let it go and it actually dissipates and you're done with it. But if you push it down, that's what causes dis-ease.
Totally.
Disease. We got just a few more minutes before we get to about an hour. I want to keep it close to that, but just say, like, what do you want to talk about? And then you can plug anything you want at the end, but a little bit about the new moon today. It's a big new moon, May 11th. I was, you know, through divine providence, ended up with these amazing connections, and this new project fundraiser just came together and launched today, which is amazing because it's all about communication and philosophy. And that's like a big theme of this new moon. And so again, to say that, like, hey guys, you should, if you're not paying attention to astrology, you should be, because it can help you sort of map things out a little bit better and make choices a little bit more informed. and it certainly helped me. And there's a lot of also just good fortune that happened with it, right? Like I said, it's divine providence. I ended up talking to this guy yesterday who's a mechanic from New York. He just met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He was a speaker at the Freedom and Health Conference in Tulsa. He's telling me all this stuff. I thought he was full of crap. I look him up. Sure enough, it's true. And now I have this great connection with this guy who created this new patriotic platform. And I'm launching this platform, and he's all in. And Scott McKay, I have met his friend last week, and he's going to send him my campaign. And so, like, again, but it all came magically, all sort of came to fruition today during the new moon, which is incredible, right? An incredible blessing. So talk about this new moon and why I'm
Yeah.
so fortunate that things lined up this way for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, look, it's not all bad, is it? You know, is basically the reality of it. Like, many people have enjoyed lockdown actually because they spent more time with their family. You know, if they have kids and
Yeah.
stuff like that. They're not working all the time. You know,
Right.
so there is always going to be
Eating all the time.
exactly, you know, the pollution in the sky and various other things. So for you, this Taurus energy, basically this new moon, is, you know, that's a sort of earth sign to do with materialism. So what you're seeing is evidence, material evidence of your work, of your integrity, of your sovereignty.
Yeah.
And because there's so much Taurian energy occurring right now, then this is an expansion, you know, or a sign, evidence of that in the material world. Now, the good news is that we're going to have more of this energy next year because the North Node is shifting into Taurus and Uranus is in Taurus. So that basically means that more unexpected new growth from this moment. So this new moon is very, like, interesting in context for next year. So you set a seed, remember, the full moon occurs Scorpio time,
Mm-hmm.
full moon in Taurus,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get the new moon again. So this sort of like shift from always having to kind of like fight the battle, and we need to see signs. And
Yeah, it's actually, you know, I can almost get choked up hearing you talk about it because I've been doing this now for 6 years where I just took a leap of faith to just change careers, knew that it would work out somehow, don't know how. You know, always kept the faith, but I'd be lying if I didn't say there weren't many nights staring at the ceiling going, what am I doing? Is this even going
yeah,
to work? Does anyone care? And, you know, along the way, I got enough signs that, like, literally just helping one person here or there is enough for me. But now it's like all culminating on this energy of this new moon. And I feel like, oh my God, I feel like, and you know, I don't want to get my hopes up because I don't want them to be crushed, but I'm kind of past that. But really, it feels like the big break is finally here because I did stay authentic and I did keep my integrity intact. And I haven't compromised on my vision, even though I was forced, like everybody last year, to take a fresh look at your vision and make sure it's what you want to be doing. And, you know, there are still a lot of people that have fought that and haven't really looked at that, but they're going to be forced to eventually. Right. So, yeah, it's really cool to feel that energy and to see it. Like you said, the material evidence of, like, somehow magically now all these really important guys are interested in the work that I'm doing. And that's literally all I've been waiting for years. I've known the work is good. I just need somebody to, like, help me promote it and get it to another level so that I can really, boom, make it a big thing. So,
and that's awesome. And we've got to celebrate the victories. You know, it's like
yeah,
Taurus is about enjoying the physical reality. You know, so if you know, we've got to really make an intention, let's say, in a day like this, or have gratitude on a day like this. You know, if that's happening.
yeah,
And likewise, if it's contrary, if people are going the other way where they're starting to feel worse, you know, not having the signs of the good coming or good things happening, but it's the opposite. They're feeling like it's never going to end and all that. And they need to make adjustments, you know, and that would mean body adjustments. So go see a healer, go see a therapist, speak to your friends, you know, do things that are important right now. Diet, for example, is super important because
yeah,
whatever happens on this planet this year, we're dealing with foreign or unusual entities, airborne entities, or psychic trauma, whatever it may be. and we've really got to clear that stuff
Aliens.
just to get peace of mind. To get peace of mind is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because this earth is a heavenly realm, and if we don't see it like that, then something's not right.
Wow, beautiful. I was going to ask you to give sort of last words before we promote a couple things, but I think you've just done that perfectly. So we'll leave it there. I'm going to promote my new project and let you think for just a minute about the things you want to promote. And also you'll send me links and I'll put them in the video so that
That's very kind. Cheers, Michael.
yeah, so, but I actually have something to promote now because it's the new moon and I have this new project. It's called Philosophy for the People. Please go to ourfreedomfunding.com and look up Philosophy for the People by the People. Again, this is a new patriotic platform founded by this guy, Dave Lipsky, who's a mechanic from New York and now he's literally meeting with Trump. He's created a platform that's competing against YouTube, Facebook, GoFundMe, TikTok, and a few others. And so this and this is what you guys have talked about for the last year, power to the people, that people like me too, truthers or whatever, we the people have to fix this country and this world. We can't allow others to do it for us. It's obviously not worked. So it's amazing to see someone like this. It's just a blue collar guy. And now he's like becoming this technology mogul. It's hysterical and amazing and beautiful all at the same time. So that's why I'm using that platform. But again, just to reiterate, Philosophy for the People by the People is I'm going to be following the Arise USA tour all over the country. I'm not officially a part of the tour, but I'm going to be tagging along like some kind of new age deadhead talking about patriotic and spiritual stuff instead of taking drugs and dancing all weird. Although I probably will do some weird dancing at some point. So check out my new program. It's on Instagram and Facebook and Telegram. I'll put the links of all of my channels under the video as well. And now, Tarek, what do you want to promote?
Yeah, well, if you are interested in astrology, you could always get a reading. That's all I'm offering at the moment. Which is, I'll just tell you what that is actually.
By the way, I'll give you a quick plug here. Amazingly reasonable pricing and incredible reading. I mean, you nailed everything for me. So I am a very happy customer of Tarek.
Oh, that's awesome. It probably won't stay that low for that long. I'm going to be straight about that. So
yeah, good. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's probably a little too reasonable. So take advantage now while you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, where do they find you?
So Tarek Adib Astrology. So sorry.
And spell that. I'll put the link.
Yeah.
Just spell it.
Okay. So it's TARECKADEEB, and then astrology ASTROLOGY .as, so AS .me. So Tarek Adib Astrology .as.me. That's all I'm doing at the moment. I'm not doing anything more than that. I'm still very.
That's not exactly true. You're helping Eugenia, your wife,
course,
with her platform. So we should plug Accessible Astrology.
Yeah, I was just about to, yeah, of course. There's my wife, Eugenia, who is.
I was just making sure you did so you didn't get in trouble when you walk out the door in a few minutes.
I owe you one.
Looking out for you, man.
So yeah, obviously, Accessible Astrology. I think it's .com.
Yeah.
Yeah, accessibleastrology.com, where she's got amazing content, and we've got a podcast. Well, she's got a podcast, and I'm helping her as much as I can.
Yeah. And it's a great community where people can get together and talk. One of the things that drew me to her community was that she wanted to make it a place where, you know, despite our different opinions, we're going to speak civilly to each other. Like that's the rule. Again, I had hoped to get a little bit more along my astrology education over the last few months, but I'm getting more engaged now just in order to do just that, just to
doing great.
hear the terminology, right? Like, because it is sort of another language, but it very quickly does make a lot of sense. So I highly recommend Accessible Astrology, the community. She's got a magic box that helps you map out each month. Here's what to expect this month. These are the things, you know, the specific dates you need to look at. Here's the theme. And then you guys do a transit video and you have resources and, you know, for what is it, like, I don't know, $33 a month or something like that. Like, you're a member of this community and you get to learn about astrology, and you get to make more informed choices in your life, which is for me what it's all about, just absorbing information. And
Yeah,
making
she's doing a great job as Eugenia. She works really, really hard, and she really cares.
You guys both do, man. You guys are like
Yeah.
nonstop. I'm glad we finally got to do this. So thank you. My best to Eugenia, and you know, let's stay more in touch, and
Yeah,
we can have some more philosophical conversations.
yeah, I'd love to.
Either,
Love to.
either on camera or off.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm just gonna
Thanks so
stop.
much, Michael.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm just gonna stop the recording, but hang out. Okay. Bye, guys.